Abuse is highly complex, and like I said, to the untrained and intuitive eyes, it could be really, really missed. You have to.
The excuse gets worked up sometimes. So I try and really buy when I was like on the pieces. I didn't want to go anywhere. It was probably involved with me. It was just I'm 30 and I get a little squabble started because we're getting overtly physical. I'm just trying to keep it away and not get it in. And the flies here are like pretty intense, so the flies are definitely going to get into her.
Now, if people are really paying attention to this video, you would automatically notice certain things that was coming into play and how she was not the abuser. Now, if you know anything about abuse, you know abusers do not take accountability and blame for anything. And if they do, it's still someone else's fault. So if someone who's being abusive towards someone, this is how their accountability is going to sound like. I'm sorry I did this, but I only did it because he or she did that. I did this because he or she said that. I did this because he or she behaved like this, so I did this. That's the way their accountability sounds. A person who is a victim would automatically take blame. They are going to self-blame because they have been groomed and trained to believe that everything is their fault, especially their emotional reactions to situations. Of course, they're going to emotionally react. Anybody's going to emotionally react to certain scenarios. Like in this situation, this girl's keys were being withheld from her.
I was like on the pieces. I didn't want to go anywhere.
And from my knowledge, this car belonged to her. She was being locked out of her car, possibly threatening to be left behind. He was humiliating her. She had to crawl through the driver's side just to get in the car. Basically, he took her car, locked her out, wouldn't give up the car, power play, controlling, domineering characteristics that are being shown right there, hands on, right in front of people's faces, and they still didn't catch on. A lot of people didn't catch on. Some people did. But of course, the girl is going to react. I think any normal person who their car is being taken away from them and being locked out, and you have to remember this car was not only a car, it was her residence. So if you take out the car and put a picture of a house, that's exactly what it's going to look like. Someone kicking you out of your own house, taking your keys and withholding it from you and telling you no, I'm not giving this to you. Of course she's going to react. Who's not going to react? Something else to note is that abusers seek power, control, and dominance over others. And victims, the only thing that they're seeking is to create back a balance of that power and to pull back their autonomy. So you will also notice this in this video. He was demonstrating power plays and she wasn't, and that's also an indication that she was the victim versus the abuser. So abusers point fingers and victims point at themselves. So these are huge indications in the very beginning of who was who, just by their character.
Sorry, I'm sorry I hit the bump there.
I was distracting him from driving, I'm sorry.
And how they were taking accountability and the words and the statements that were coming out of their mouth. Like I said, with abuse in domestic cases, they are very, very tricky because no one was there from the very beginning. You're taking and listening to different sides of the story. And usually it's her side, his side, and somewhere in between is the truth. So you have to look deeper. You have to hear what's not being said. You're going to have to read body language. You're going to have to really be intuitive. And if you're not intuitive, you're not going to be able to catch it. So you have to keep in mind and put the pieces of the puzzle together to be able to come up with what's really happening here. Something else that you have to really take into consideration here is that abusers are always either emotionally charged or emotionally controlled. So either they're completely out of control, like in that sense of violence. Emotionally charged and emotionally distressed look different, but they only look different to people who know the difference. So emotional distress and emotional charge are two very different things, and they look different. When a person is in emotional distress, they're gonna look like they're shaking. They're gonna look like they're hyperventilating, like they can't catch their breath. They're gonna look like they sense of fear. They're gonna make themselves feel small. They might be shaking, they may be crying, they may seem very anxious, like the anxiety is gonna be like through the roof. So those are signs that a person is in emotional distress. Emotionally charged is something completely different. And when you look at a person who's emotionally charged, they're not going to make themselves look small. An abuser is not going to do that. Only a victim is. So in this case, when you look at it clearly and you look at their demeanor and you look at their body language, you can clearly see that he was not a victim. He's not displaying the regular traits of a person who is a victim. And then when they tell him that he clearly is the victim, you could see his reaction. And I'm going to play it for you. Now, if you didn't catch on to any of the red flags in the video, this should have been your indicator that he definitely was not a victim. Even a man, because I've actually witnessed men in domestic violence cases and how they react, and I promise you, this is not it. They're not going to be laughing at the situation. You know why he's laughing? He's laughing because he's like, oh my, I can't believe this. Like, I got away with this. Like, they think that I'm the victim when I'm actually the perpetrator. That's why it's so important, and I stress so much on my channel, that people have to get educated and become aware of emotional abuse. And a lot of people feel like, I'm not in this situation, I don't need to actually become aware, or I'm married and I've been in a stable relationship for a long time and it's not present. Well, there's a few facts to know about that. Emotional abuse is present in the most stable relationships because it's patterns and behaviors that we have learned through our own upbringing and childhoods that we take on. We learn it, and it's a pattern of behavior that we repeat. It does not need to come to the point of blows and domestic violence and things of that sort for emotional abuse to be present. That's number one. Number two, if you're not learning it for yourself, it's good to learn it for other people you come in contact with. Your daughters, your cousins, your friends. Now, can a woman be abusive? Absolutely they can. There's a lot of women who are abusive to their male counterparts. And there's a lot of women who take advantage of the system. But once again, you'll be able, with an intuitive eye, to catch on to their body language and the tactics that they're using. A lot of people, when they viewed this video, they said that she was being manipulative by crying, and that's, a tactic that women usually go to. That is true. However, when this video first started, from the very beginning, she was already crying when they pulled her over.
What's your guys' names?
Gabby.
Gabby, Brian, okay. What's going on with this crying?
I'm sorry, we've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
It was a long day right here.
So now, a manipulative tactic that, if it was manipulative, what she would have viewed is she would have started crying once they told her that she was the abuser, or once they started not to believe her story. She would have used crying as a manipulation tactic. But one thing you are going to notice, that with her, she was already crying from the very beginning, and she was not trying to hide it. She was actually in emotional distress. So that's how you know the difference between emotional distress and manipulation. Now with him, you'll notice in his behavior that he is super nervous, and he's very curious on what she said.
What's that? Yeah, I just spoke to her. So, you want to do me a favor? Let's go.
Now, victims never do that. The only thing victims are like curious about or worried about is, are you going to go back and tell the abused what I told you? In his case, that was not happening.
I don't see this as any complaints about me. I'm just,
Abuse is highly complex, and like I said, to the untrained and intuitive eyes, it could be really, really missed. You have to remember as well, when you're talking about victims, they're already trained and groomed, and they are codependent. That's a big part of the scenario too. They are very codependent and emotionally dependent on their abuse.
I want you guys to be separated. But I can't tell you this.
I just don't usually drive the van, so I just want to make sure it's not like far.
No, that's fine.
People who've never been around an abused person or don't understand abuse dynamics, they struggle with the fact of, why is she defending him? Why didn't she say the truth? Why would she lie? And why would she take responsibility? So here's a couple of answers for that. So you have to remember with victims, they are going to cover up the abuse. Why? Because number one, they are afraid. Number two, they have become codependent. Number three, they have emotionally created a trauma bond with this other person. They are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. If you don't know what that is, I would definitely say to look it up and learn about it. It's basically when you become, you create this emotional attachment to your abuser and you start feeling you want to protect them. You just want to protect them.
She doesn't want that demon of theirs all territories that matter. Yeah.
So if you don't understand the facts about abuse, you're not going to know what to look for and what to ask. So it could appear when you ask her these questions, she's definitely going to defend him. And if you notice, everything that came out of her mouth was self-blame. It was her fault. She took on all of the responsibility for hitting him, for being the aggressor, for being the person starting things. And if you look very closely at him, he blamed her too. He never took accountability for anything, which suggested that he definitely was an abuser. You notice that with abusers. Anytime they are capable of throwing you under the bus and dodging accountability and throwing you into the fire to save themselves, they are going to do it. But with a victim, they would never do that. The first line of attack for a victim is going to be themselves. Attack me. I will take the blame. It's okay. The only time an abuser would do that is once they know they are out of the heat, that they know that you see them, that you're relating to them, and you don't think of them as the aggressor and the abuser, then they might come in and try to save the day and try to play like the hero. But no time before that, and I'm going to show you how that happens as well.
So she's forever a plus plus. That's more of an idea about how she did not want to tell me separately to be a friend in town. Someone she can stay. Tomorrow, if you want to, it's up to you. You can call yourself. You can't because you don't have the terms for you.
A big red flag with abusers is when all attention is not on them. They are not in the spotlight of your eyes. Anything that you're focused on that is taking your attention away from them or taking the glam away from them, they are not going to like. Anything that you're involved in that's going to elevate you or that you're enjoying or that's bringing you some type of recognition or that's bringing you some type of attention, they're not going to like. That he felt that she couldn't be successful in her blog or whatever, she was going towards. That's the first thing she mentions. And that's one of the things that I was like,
You know, I maybe if I didn't do any of it, I'd have been like a,
these are the red flags that you gotta really listen out for. Belittling, breaking somebody else's confidence, making them feel as if they're not good enough or they can't do something, and hitting their self-confidence is big with abusers. So the minute I heard that, I was like, something's not right here. Ignoring boundaries, humiliation tactics, degrading someone in public, another big red flag. Making you feel like your emotions and your reactions to unfair treatment in unbalanced situations. When the abuser tries to make you feel that you're the problem for having those reactions and those emotions, when anybody who's healthy will have those reactions, that's a huge red flag. And when you hear someone taking accountability for that and self-blaming for their emotions and how they are, that's creating a problem here, that's huge. And once again, abusers never take accountability. So when you hear that, you automatically know that she is the victim. Abusers rarely apologize for their mood instability and their mood imbalances. They're never going to apologize for that. Victims, they do. Why? Because they're groomed to do it. Abusers are big on minimizing arguments, any type of disagreement, any part that they played in anything. They're going to minimize it. They're going to minimize, oh, it's just a little bit, it's so small. And they'll do body language to demonstrate that. They'll shrug their shoulders, meaning it wasn't that much of a big deal. They'll do hand gestures. They'll, minimize with their fingers to show you and try to convince you. It's no big deal. No big deal. This argument, no big deal. What she was complaining about, no big deal. I kind of shoved her just a little bit, just it wasn't aggressive. It was just to get her off me. They will minimize, and minimize until they have you convinced to believe that what they did was minimum. Abusers are big on minimizing your efforts, your goals, anything you're trying to go towards. They'll belittle it. They'll make it seem like it's insignificant.
What happened this morning is that she's trying to set up like a website.
Or things that you're doing is insufficient into accomplishing your dreams, so you can get deterred and just feel like I cannot do it, because they want you to feel that way. You give up on your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, something that you're going towards, especially if it's gaining you attention. That's a win-win for them, especially when they are possessive, controlling, and domineering. Anytime that you're connected to more people, you're exposed to more people, that's a problem for them, because that means that there's going to be more people that you are going to be subjected to that has opinions, that might be able to observe your behavior. You're going to have to go out with them. You might make new friends, and now this person's going to be a part of that, and now people and eyes are going to be observing their behavior. So that means more influence over you. They try to keep you separate from other people. They try to isolate you. So they try to isolate you from friends. They try to isolate you from family members. So it wasn't surprising to me to hear that she actually lived in his family's home, completely away from her family, and hardly had any friends. And the one friend that she did have, very possessive, and he was trying to keep her from that relationship. That's not surprising. I hope if anything comes out of this devastating situation is just growth and knowledge on how we all can do better. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.